Hi, folks. Welcome back to Beyond the Call podcast. We're continuing with part 5 of our conversation with Captain Matt Frost, retired, an Army pilot. And I really encourage you to listen to the first 4 episodes of this conversation. It's really worth listening to and hearing what his journey. And let's get on with part 5. Thanks, guys. So for you, it sounds like that was the beginning of the end.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I was already feeling quite stressed about the whole situation, and then I was I was looking for something else. I needed something else to strive for, and I finally got approval to go and do instructor training. And I've been asking to be an instructor for years and years and years, but I did not want to go to Toowoomba and live in Toowoomba, which was generally the career path that most people in my position would choose. If they wanted to be an instructor, they would go down there for 2 or 3 years, a couple of posting cycles, be an instructor and teaching new pilots, and
Yep.
then they would come back and fly in the regiment. Southeast Queensland sucks. I did not want any part of it. I hated Toowoomba. The whole being part of the school, it was just yuck. The whole idea that I'd be away from the fighting regiment, like
Yeah.
fighting was what I was absolutely love to do. Like I still get fired up about planning a mission now. The
Yep.
thought of those missions that I planned and flew and
You've
executed
done a
perfectly,
million
like
of them in your head.
yeah, exactly. So that was what I wanted to be, to be in the fight and be on the radio and helping a ground team. Man, that was what I lived for. The whole
Yeah.
idea of being away from that just irked me. So finally, they were so desperate, basically, that they said yes. They're like, yes, you can go down, get your qualification, and come back to the regiment, be the regiment or the flying instructor in the squadron.
Okay.
So I did that. I did it pretty quick. I did it in like 5 months because I did a posting without my family. My daughter had just been born. I conceived my second daughter while I was down on course. Like it was a pretty hectic time in my family life. And when I got back, I was like, okay, this is brilliant. So I'm in the safety loop, teaching young guys how to be safe. I can implement changes in the checklist and the safety systems. I can implement technical changes for maintenance test flying and maintenance procedures. I'm clued in with all of the guys that make a difference to make this aircraft and make this regiment an awesome place. I
Yeah.
had enough knowledge and knew all of the gunnery officers where we could, cross train and teach people new procedures with gunnery. How good is this? I felt like I was important, but also I had the skills to back up what I wanted to achieve. I wanted it to be, like I wanted to, if if we were an Olympic team, I wanted to win the gold medal for helicoptering. Like that was I had this drive in me to be the best, and I was surrounded by these awesome people who could do that. It was just a matter of getting the team working. And then on one of my very first flights was July 2015. I was taking a younger pilot. He was a bit underconfident. That was what, I had been identified as an underconfident pilot who just needed a boost, basically. He had the skills. He
Yeah.
just didn't know how to back himself correctly. It was like, hey, Frosty, take him out. Just do some old school reconnaissance. Go and do some attack runs. Just go and do some basic stuff and just get
Yeah.
him all fired up and sexed up about
Yeah.
how good flying this machine is because
Have
it
a
can
bit
be
of
quite
fun.
yeah, it can be quite daunting. The books are thick and you need to know them back to front. And sometimes you kind of forget that it can be actually quite enjoyable just to go out and
Yeah.
bash around and shoot stuff. So
Yeah.
we briefed this flight. He had the controls, and then 2 minutes after getting airborne, there was a smell in the cockpit. I'm like, hey mate, can you smell something? And he took a breath, and I'm like, hey mate, all right, I'm just going to need you to get us on the ground, carry out the checklist actions, get us on the ground as quick as you can. And then I'm not exactly sure why, but he was having trouble landing us. He was having trouble identifying the landing zone. So I'm like, hey mate, just land us right there next to the road. It'll be easy for recovery. Then he was having trouble orientating and getting lined up and selecting a landing spot. And I was like, you know what? Don't worry, man. I've got this. Took over, landed it, and I got out, and I was just absolutely filthy. Just filthy. It was like finding out your girlfriend's just cheated on you.
Yeah.
Just awful feeling of just being betrayed again. Like, how could
For
I put
you,
myself
deja
through this
vu.
again?
How
Again,
how
I'm
was
like
he?
so stupid. Why did I think anything would be going to be different? And here's this aircraft, and I actually read his safety report afterwards, my co-pilot, and to his credit, underconfident and not really loving the job as it was, but he wrote a really good statement, and he's like, Captain Frost appeared, but his Captain Frost behaviour appeared erratic. after landing, and he made several jokes that I did not understand. And I was like, "You nailed it, buddy." I was fucking livid. I was like, "Fuck this piece of shit aircraft! I want to burn the fucking thing to the ground." And I'm like, "Oh no, no worries. Recovery will be here soon. You know, get your lunch out, and we'll have a chat about what we did fly." Next minute, fuck this piece of shit. Yeah, and I was all over the map, mate.
Yeah.
I was the definition of unstable. Anyway, we went back, and by then we'd established a procedure for getting medical checks and taking blood samples and stuff. So all of that stuff happened, and
Did
I got
he
home.
identify that he was affected?
I did sort of talk to him, and he wasn't sure. He said, "Oh, I think I
Okay.
smelled something, but I'm not really sure." Which is one of the things, right? That's why it's so insidious, because
Yeah.
some people can smell it, some people can't.
Just with the
Um,
trouble landing and stuff like that. Like,
yeah.
was that a confidence thing, or was that or was that an
Oh,
effect thing? You're not sure.
I don't know, and I can't remember.
Yeah.
So yeah, I went back. I had a quick chat to my CEO. I'm like, so he's like, take some days, come back next week. We'll talk about it. I think he knew. He could see it. I was
Yep.
done, you know.
Yep.
And I remember talking to him on the phone. I was like, so I can't do this anymore. And as it turns out, the method of failure this time was a bit different. What had actually happened was a seal had let go on one of the engines. The oil had streaked down the side of the aircraft and had been sucked in by a different in cooling fan, one that was supposed to cool the avionics. That oil mixture had then splattered on a bunch of hot computer parts in there
Right.
and started to fumate in a different way.
Yeah.
Um,
So a totally
and
unrelated, random sort of failure. But
basically, the fume path was still the same. It was just a bit longer,
yeah. Yeah.
and it was that at that point that I realized there's actually nothing I can do to stop this from happening. There's no procedure that I can teach these guys. There's no cleaning procedure that can stop this from happening. If this can happen by a random seal failing and then us still facing this same problem within a few minutes of taking off, there's no hope. There's
This is
nothing
a
I can do.
yeah, this is a
And
design error.
all of the coping strategies that I'd put in place for making it okay was like, I'd put myself in danger to protect my co-pilots. I made sure that my maintenance test piloting was as good as it could possibly be. My inspections were thorough. Like, I knew the maintenance guys, and they had, we had built a rapport where I knew that they wouldn't put me, in a bad position, because we knew each other. I'd
Yeah.
spent time getting to know individual maintainers on a personal level, talking about their girlfriends and stuff. And I'd spent enough time in the cockpit on the ground talking to dudes one-on-one and asking them, hey, look me in the eyes and tell me that this aircraft is good to go. None of that made a difference, because
Yeah.
they did the very best job that they could do, and shit still broke. And
Yeah.
I blamed myself. I should have done better. I should have spoke up sooner. I should have spoke up louder. I should have designed a checklist that was different. I should have, the should haves just went on forever, and I just couldn't do
Yeah.
it anymore.
Yeah.
And my CEO, to his credit, said, "Hey man, I'll support whatever you want to do." I'm like, "Hey, send me to 5 Aviation Regiment. I want to fly Chinooks." It was something different. I knew that they worked. I knew that they went places. They did good flying. Like that, you felt like you made a difference when you did disaster relief and flood relief, and you could you know make a difference a lot easier. You didn't have to go to Afghanistan to shoot bad guys to make a
Yeah.
difference. And he's like, "Yep, no worries." And that was really the beginning of the end. I've been masking the effects for a long time, but looking back, absolutely burnt out,
Yeah.
borderline depressed. I was implementing maladaptive coping mechanisms. I wasn't talking to anybody. I couldn't tell my
Yeah.
wife, because I felt like that would make her feel unsafe. Knowing that I was at such an increased risk every time I went to work.
Yeah.
My mates, I say my mates, but my colleagues, I didn't really hang around my flying colleagues that much on the weekends and whatever. I just never really got the hang of that. And the mates that I did have, we would talk about it, but it wasn't like a therapy session or anything. It didn't really make me feel any better. It just sort of compounded what I knew. I would summarize the situation, and they'd be like, "Oh man, that sucks." And that was about it. Like, it didn't really help me process anything like you probably should after something like that.
Yeah.
And I was just kind of ignoring the rest of it and carrying the burden,
You
hoping that it
sleeping?
would. I mean, I was okay, but I was also not as fit as I should be, and I didn't relax ever. I was
Yeah.
very, very wired all the time. I was very intolerant of other people not performing at a high level, like I knew that they should. Like I was, if I'm putting in effort and performing at a high level, so should you.
Yeah.
My wife didn't, of course, your loved ones don't appreciate that very much.
Yeah.
Yeah, and all of those things were starting to fray around the edges, and I didn't really know why.
Yeah.
And I didn't really know what to do about it either, because all of the things that I was trying seemed to work, but also not really. It was a very strange time, and I have a lot of fuzzy memories from that time. And as it turns out, that's one of the symptoms,
Yeah.
from trauma and from doing the wrong thing to cope. Your
Yeah.
memory gets all messed up. And then it
Was
wasn't
there any, did
until
you see a psychologist or anything like this while you were, while any, you know, as a preventative thing, or like, is there any sort of compulsory psychology within?
so we used to do the last compulsory psychologist things that we did when we came back from Timor. We got asked
Okay.
to present, and basically we knew what to say. But the psychologist nurse would be like, "Oh, okay, you're one of those. You just say what you need to say to get out of here as quick as you can." I'm like, "Yep,
Just tick the box. Yeah.
tick the box. That
Yeah.
everything's okay." And we like to think that we didn't see anything in Timor that was particularly traumatic or whatever. But my discussion today with you proves that that's not true either.
Yeah.
So, I got quite emotional talking about that, and that's not something that's happened before. So that's something
Yeah.
I need to work through. Um, but I did go and see the psychologist nurse, and it took me a little while to understand that if you self-refer, the chain of command doesn't have to know, which means you don't.
Okay.
There's no repercussions. There's no grounding. Because we regularly get briefings. Hey, if you get diagnosed with depression, 6 months on the ground, minimum six
Yeah.
months. So there's
Doesn't
one.
that just encourage everything? Yeah.
Like, there's one way to fix a pilot who's depressed, is that stop him from doing the thing that he loves.
Yeah.
There's no way that I'm going to admit that I'm struggling if it means I'm going to get grounded. Are you kidding me? Like,
Yeah.
no way, no way. Like, I was having back pain and shoulder pain, and my neck hurt because I turned the wrong way with my helmet on during a high G turn. There's no way I was reporting any of this stuff. No way am I getting grounded because of a physical or a mental illness. Are you joking?
Yeah.
And everybody was the same. Like,
Yeah.
it took at that time, we had a particularly rigid medical officer who would just ground you at the drop of a hat. He would ground you
Yeah.
for antibiotics. He would ground you for taking Panadol if you sneezed the wrong way. Like, it was just
But
that type
you
of.
hear that worldwide, like special forces, special operators, same thing. It's just, you know, it's every organization where safety,
Yeah.
we're about you. But if you're depressed, we're grounding you. We're taking away the very thing that makes you operate.
Yeah, and you like, I get it. Like, let's take
Yeah.
the pressure off this guy and give him a chance to regenerate. But the pressure was self-generated and maintained because we wanted to be awesome operators. We wanted to be the best pilot in the regiment. We wanted to be the best gunnery. We would regularly have competitions and award each other prizes for the best shooting or the best flying or the best mission or
Yeah.
the highest score in the simulator. Um, if you had more knowledge about something than someone else, then you were regarded highly. Like,
Yep.
you would study a niche to be an expert at that, so that in the squadron, if we had this amazing corporate
You're
knowledge.
that person. Yeah.
So for that, to have 6 months off, or to be grounded because of a medical issue and lose that edge, you felt like you were letting yourself down, but also you felt like you were letting everybody else down. So there was a bit of pressure, both internal and external, to maintain that that edge the whole time.
Yeah.
Um,
And
and
it's
that was something
also
that.
it becomes who you are. You're a pilot. I'm a
Yeah, and
paramedic.
yeah,
When you're not that, who the hell are you?
yeah, and we took real pride in being the most awesome version of that we could. We took pride in being better pilots than any of the other regiments. They had their own particular set of skills, but we took pride in in our briefs being more succinct, and our SOPs being tighter, and our flying being more precise than
Yeah.
anybody else who was airborne on that day.
Yeah.
So to take a break and lose some of that, you just couldn't fathom it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
So you've done the Chinook training. It's funny with the Chinooks. It always reminds me. I was working down down in Guru, and we had an emergency landing for a couple of Chinooks at Woodstock, and it was a fumes incident where the pilots had they were overcome by fumes and they did an emergency landing. Now, there was a guy there. It was a day that there was actually two officers on. It was a handover day, and it was a guy whose first day it was in Guru. We're normally single officers, and all we knew that there was 14 POB on this Chinook, and we're driving up and we're probably 10 kilometers from the highway, and all we could see was this big black ball of smoke come up. And we're like, holy shit, this is bad. So we've turned left, and they were aiming for the Woodstock airport, and we were like, okay. The smoke came from the right hand side, and the Woodstock Airport was on the left. So we're like, okay, we're giving sit reps. You know, there's smoke on the right. We're just going to check the airport, and we got there, and there was three safely landed Chinooks, and there just happened to be a bushfire starting at the same time on the other side. Because fair
Yeah,
dinkum, I was shitting my pants. I
yeah,
thought we were
that's
going to an absolute disaster. And,
yeah,
and we rocked up, and yeah, it was there was a small, I think it was a small electrical thing, and they did an emergency landing. Everyone was fine, no dramas at all. And the pilot was this was at like 5 o'clock in the afternoon, so the pilot knew he had to sit with this bloody Chinook all night for recovery the next day. So they got, and it was a pretty decent response, as you would for something like that. So there was a number of ambulance officers. We were first on scene. There was police, there was fire. Everyone was on the way to this because had the potential to be a disaster. And so they took us through the Chinook, and we're like, this is really cool, and excellent, cool. And then I said to the pilot, I said, "Oh, if you're gonna be here all day, do you want me to take you up to the shop, get some supplies?" He's like, "Oh, that'd be great." So we went to the local shop, and he gets in the ambulance, and he's looking around, going, "This is so cool."
yeah.
I'm like, this is everyone's got their own toys.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I remember sitting in a tank one time and thinking, man, you guys have got a sweet ride. This is amazing. And he said the exact same thing about my cockpit. So yeah, isn't it funny how our toys might be different, but we're just as impressed.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Our workplaces just vary, but yeah, we're all
yeah,
everyone else has got the coolest job in the world.
yeah, yeah. That's exactly right. Yeah,
So
yeah,
you did the Chinook training. Obviously, you've mentioned that you're on you're obviously struggling psychology. You've done the Chinook training and qualified in that. You've
yep.
you've flown them for a little while.
So I did my training in the States. It was 3 months over in Alabama. Fantastic
Okay.
trip. It was, yeah, and I did a staff work job basically while I was waiting for training, a slot on a training course. Went over there with a couple of other blokes, and I mean, I did okay on the course, but I was very disappointed with the quality of some of the instructors. One of the instructors over there used to mark the, you know, the ride sheet, basically the sortie, learning
Yeah.
outcomes
Mm.
before we even did the sortie. So
Oh,
yeah, I was like, how the hell am I supposed to get better if I don't get accurate feedback? I was really dirty about that. Um, but I did okay. And every course that I go on, I want to completely dominate and do the absolute best I can. I want to get the ground school award. I want to get the best marks in all the tests, and I want to fly, like the best I can. I was really striving for success. I wanted to prove myself, and I was really still, leaning into being the best pilot I could be.
yeah,
Um, and I'd had enough time on the ground where I had a real zeal for learning again, and learning the new aircraft systems was no problem. I was like really all about it. And then I was adapting the things that I already knew from Tiger World to just a different airframe. There was quite a few different procedures, and obviously the cockpit's very different, but it's you can still wrap your head around it. And
yeah.
then I came back here, and we're doing some Australianization. Our Australian Chinooks are a little bit different. There's a few procedures that we needed to know a little bit tighter, a little bit different than some of the American baseline stuff.
Okay.
And I was halfway through that
We
training.
fly on the left hand side.
Yeah, something like that. Honestly, I can't remember what on earth the differences are off the top of my head. It's been a while, but so this was 2017. So I've been doing a ground roll for a year and a half by then, and I really enjoyed that. The ground roll, I went into it kind of thinking, groundwork, staff work sucks, but I found my niche. I was able to make some pretty positive changes, I thought. So
Yeah.
that was worth it. Anyway, halfway through my Australian training on Chinook, I snapped my Achilles. I was doing some PT one afternoon and just destroyed my leg basically,
Yeah.
and hobbled my way to hospital. The guy doing the MRI was laughing his ass off. He was like, "Dude, you have completely screwed this up. Like, there's a big gap there, and that is
Could
not
tell,
okay."
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, I'm glad that I made his day, but my day was fairly ruined by then. And I had surgery pretty much straight away,
Yeah.
and it was not okay. It was really, really painful, and I was taking endone or oxycodone for the pain management,
Yeah.
getting into the anti-inflammatories, and basically I just laid on the floor in my lounge room for like 3 or 4 months, staring at the ceiling, hoping my leg
Yeah.
would stop swelling, and started to was in a moon boot for a little while, and then slowly, walking again and whatever. And I was back to running 6 or 7 months later, which was pretty
Yeah.
good. Like I was
Yeah.
really, I was pushing it pretty hard because I wanted to get back to training. I wanted to be back in the squadron, and I was just about to go back to flying. I had cleared my medical. They assessed my ability to navigate the cockpit, do, before and after flight checks and climb on the outside of the aircraft, do an emergency egress and all that kind of basic stuff. And I passed my fitness test. And then I realized the amount of study that I had to do because I'd forgotten everything basically.
All right.
I had a bunch of procedures, I had to reread all of the reality was I probably didn't need to do that much. But for me, I don't want to pass. I want to be the
Yeah.
best. Like it really bugged me not knowing as much, not being as sharp as I used to be, not knowing as much or as in depth as I wanted. And I really, like you can't really study when you're high on oxycodone. I don't know if anybody's attempted it, but I don't know the secret. Um,
I'm sure there's
but
plenty of uni students that have done that.
yeah, but and as I'd found out, there was a time there towards the end of my recovery where my leg wasn't hurting that much, but I was still on a pretty high dose of oxycodone,
Uh,
and I was really looking forward to 2 p.m. because
yeah.
that was when I could take the next dose, and I was just
Yeah.
like, why am I looking forward to 2 p.m. so much? And then the voice in the back of my head was, oh, that's when you get to feel all warm and fuzzy, man. I was like,
Yeah.
wait, why am I feeling warm and fuzzy from what the? And I talked to my friend who was a pharmacist, and she's like, yeah, you should probably get off that. I went and
Yeah.
spoke to the doctor. I'm like, can you please give me something else? This is not okay. I formed, that was like the precursor to addictive behavior, basically.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And yeah, that was when I realized, okay, we need to get that under control. And I was using it to mask as well. Like I was just like, I feel shit. Well, I'm just taking oxy and it'll be fine. It'll feel better,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
I was just letting
In the
mask.
brain, and you don't have to think when you're high.
Yeah, exactly. I wasn't taking an excessive amount. I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm not addicted. I'm not taking like 10 at a time. I'm just taking the normal dose. But I was treating a different symptom than this leg pain.
Yes.
And it took me a little while to figure that out. And then it took me a little while to kind of do something else about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Did you
by the time
withdraw?
no, it wasn't ever that bad, but
Good.
I did miss that 2 p.m. warm fuzzy
Yeah.
feeling.
Yeah.
The Yeah, so I was I'm trying to think now. I remember feeling, pretty inadequate at the time. Like I was just like, there's so much I had to study, and my leg is still hurting, but I'm trying not to let it, impact me. I remember
Yeah.
doing lots of running at the time. I was really, really thin. I'd gotten down to maybe 68 kilos or something. What was it 5'9", 175 centimeters. So I was pretty thin, very
Yeah.
lean, and running. I was, like, hey, look, I'm running. I must be fit. I must be okay.
Yeah.
Uh, and yeah, I really wasn't. And I was in a counseling session with my wife. We were, trying to learn how to be better partners for each other, I guess. And all of these little symptoms had started to flare up in my marriage as they do. Your relationship will lay you bare if you're not careful. and don't do the
Absolutely.
right things. And the therapist was looking at me, and I couldn't just do one of the basic things that she does. So I think she'd asked me to hold her hand and tell her something positive, or I can't remember. It was something very simple, but I just couldn't do it. And I
Yep.
just broke down right there in the office, just tears streaming down. And the therapist was like, "Are you okay? Have you thought about harming yourself?" And then the floodgates opened. I was an absolute wreck. Just
Yep.
that just absolutely destroyed me. And I'd already been seeing a psychologist by that time. I'd self-referred and asked for treatment, and we'd been working through some things, but um, I had the world's best plan for suicide. It was going to be front page news. It was going to be fantastic. Like I don't do anything. I don't do anything
What
little. I want to be.
I'm picturing the guy that did it in the airplane when he stole the airplane.
Oh no, I wasn't gonna do anything quite that grand, but it was going to be pretty impressive. And when she called me out on it, I haven't told anybody my plan ever, but I broke down. That was it.
Yep.
The floodgates were opened, and you know how they tell you never to leave anybody who who's admitted they've got suicidal ideation alone. I
Yeah.
know why now. That feeling, oh my God. Oh, like just incredible. I was crying for the rest of the day. We immediately went, stopped the session, went straight to the doctors. The doctor prescribed me some antidepressants straight away.
Yeah.
Didn't help. No, that was the wrong
Antidepressants.
medication.
Well, they take months to work.
Yeah, exactly. And we did a suicide risk management plan, and he called my
Yep.
CO, and he did all of the army checklist things. Let's stop this guy from killing himself today.
Yep.
Um, it didn't really address the problem though,
No.
because I was dealing with stuff that had happened years before, and I had no idea that that's what it was. And I had
Yep.
what amounted to a wife that was not understanding and then unwilling to be supportive in the way that actually mattered to me.
Yep.
She's a lovely person, but just not cut out for that. Just doesn't
Yep.
know how to deal with that, and couldn't deal with that either. So she kind of just went on about her own thing and didn't really understand, or didn't want to, or didn't really try to understand what I was going through.
Yep.
So I remember getting up maybe the next day, and I forgot to put pants on. Like I was just dumb. I just instantly overnight just got dumb. Just couldn't look after myself. I was just an absolute mess. And looking back, it was probably a combination of things.
Yep.
Medication, just completely overwhelmed by my emotions. Something had just broken inside me,
Yep.
and it was a really, really rough time. And eventually, it led to the breakdown of my marriage. So this was in 2017, the middle of the year, sometime probably, maybe August, I want to say. But by 20, sorry, no, it was 2018. By 2019, we were separated, and
Yep.
on the road to divorce. It was not gonna. She was just like, no, I want it to be like it used to be. And I'm like, well, I don't know
Yep.
I don't know how to achieve that. I
Yep.
don't know what that means. It's not achievable. And the army were really great. They gave me heaps of leave. Um, my boss was understanding. He put me on tasks that were relatively easy. And when I did get back to work, it was very, very slow paced. It was half days and a few days here and a few days there, with you know tasks that were challenging but not urgent, so that I
Yep.
could apply myself but not really feel too pressured. And that was
Yes.
really great, but my heart wasn't in it. I felt all love for flying just gone. It just burnt out
Yep.
of me. I didn't really have any love for the army.
Yep.
All of those years of struggling had taken that will as well. Like I just didn't really understand what I was doing anymore. I was like, why am I doing this?
Yep.
But I also felt like a financial conscript. I was like, I've got a mortgage, I've got two kids and a wife. I got to come to work. I've got
Yep.
to. I can't just quit. And I didn't really know what else to do, because most of the guys in my position with as many flying hours, and I had 2,000 flying hours or whatever, multiple types, IFR rated, day and night rated, night vision goggles, all of that kind of stuff. They would go and fly rescue helicopters or fly helicopters out to rigs in the ocean and that kind of
Yep.
thing. And I just couldn't think of anything worse than that. I to fly. Oh my God, to know all that stuff again. It was just, I had no idea. I was so lost.
Yep.
And eventually, the chief medical officer I shared an office with another guy. He was there one day, and he was a lovely bloke. I've got a lot of time for him. He was a colonel, and we were sharing this office and just chatting. And he knew my what was going on because the army medical system sort of keeps, I guess, like high risk individuals, like people like me
Yeah.
at the time.
You're known.
You are known to the people who matter. He looked at me and went, "You're not doing okay, are you?" I'm like, "Not really." He's like, "You don't really want to be here." I'm like, "Not really." He's like,
Yeah.
"It's time, mate. Like it's time." So then we instigated the started the medical discharge procedure
Yeah.
process, and
How
I
did
ended up.
you handle that decision or that admission that it was time? I found it so hard.
It was rough. That's all I'd ever known. It was all I ever wanted to be.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine being anything else, and it's something that I still struggle with because
Yeah.
how do how do you identify yourself
Yeah.
without that label that you've had for so long?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was the army pilot. I was the Tiger pilot. I was the Kiowa pilot. I was the reconnaissance pilot. I was the maintenance test. Like I was just that's how I identified for so long. It was
Yeah.
difficult, a very difficult decision. But I was also glad that it was that guy.
Yes.
Um, and he could see like this is a guy that I need to take advice from, and he's giving me advice. Is probably you should probably listen. Um, yeah, so he was. Yeah, I could I could
And it
give him
was
a hug actually.
done in a supportive way, like not done in
Yeah,
it's time to get you out. It's for
yeah, that's right.
you. The best thing to do is to leave.
Yeah, and so yeah, that kicked off a whole bunch of stuff. So
Yeah.
dealing with DVA, um, and going through the medical discharge procedure where you have to identify all of your issues, all of your injuries and illnesses, and then rate them and how much they affect your lifestyle,
Yeah.
and then cross your fingers and hope that that's going to be enough because
Yeah.
I've still got to pay a mortgage, and
Yeah.
I've still got to support my kids and pay school fees and stuff. So I
So,
was in
so for
no.
those that aren't in the defence force, that what I think, without putting words in your mouth, Matt, is basically you have to each injury or illness has a percentage or a point, an amount of points given to it, and for you guys to get your pension or your gold card, you have to get to a certain amount of points.
Basically, that's exactly right. Yeah. So, as an example, I think tinnitus, the constant ringing in your ears is worth like 11 or 15 points. And then that affects every aspect of your life. So it's
Yeah.
given a pretty high rating, and it's given a pretty high compensation value as well.
Yeah.
Um, so depending on your unique combination of injuries and illnesses, you are awarded, a certain amount of compensation, and those points also work out whether you're eligible for a pension or not, and what level
Yeah.
that pension is. So thankfully, I'm okay,
Yeah.
and I got a gold card because my injuries and illnesses added up to enough to get free healthcare, which
Yeah.
is an absolute blessing. Look, any day of the week, I'll swap you for a healthy body,
Yeah.
and work full time. But
Yeah.
it's very very difficult. You know, basically the thing that affects me the most, yeah, I can't hear my kids very well. So my ears always ring, and I've lost a lot of hearing in my right ear because that was the side that was very close to the open door of the cockpit a lot of the time.
Yeah.
It was also the ear that was close to the rifle firing,
Yeah.
when we did you know drills and that kind of thing. Um, and I can't hear my kids when they're in the car. I can't hear them when they're talking quietly at night. That really bugs me. And
Yeah.
then this one stings, but when my little kids are running towards me, I have to decide whether I can catch them or not.
Because of your physical injuries.
Yeah, is my back going to go out if I pick up my kid?
Yeah.
Am I bracing myself correctly? Are my legs in the right spot? Can I catch him while he's running?
Yeah.
And that's a
Yeah.
terrible thing to have to make an assessment of. But
Yeah, something that comes so naturally to people that don't have that issue.
yeah,
I'm
exactly.
really thankful that I don't. But but when you do have that issue, and you're going to lift up something heavy, then at least you can brace yourself, you can prepare for the lift and assess it. When it's something as spontaneous as your child, then yeah, that's
Yeah, it hits
it's split
different for
second.
sure.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. And that's been probably the biggest challenge that I've faced is adapting what I do to make sure that I don't hurt myself doing everyday things, basically. So,
Yeah.
you know, I've got a couple of motorcycles. I love motorcycles. I love modifying them and, you know, pulling the engines apart and all that kind of technical garbage. So I had to basically figure out a way of making that not hurt. And that's been a real challenge actually. I had to get a lift table, and I've got to get a huge area, much bigger than you would normally allocate to a motorcycle, so you can
Yeah.
so I can roll a stool around and sit down while I do that stuff.
Yeah.
When you go to, you know, I can't lift the motorcycle engine out of the frame anymore, so you got to figure out some way of doing that. Like it's just super frustrating to do normal sort of stuff, and that takes the fun out of a lot of that stuff as well, which then
Yeah.
makes you not want to do it either. So you end up the thing that used to help you cope, you know, doing your hobbies becomes a thing that you've got to cope with. Like it's
Yeah. Yeah. And
it's
then you
almost
withdraw.
self-defeating after a
It's
point. Exactly. It's
yeah.
too hard. I'm worried,
Yeah.
you know, last time I hurt my back, oh, I'm not going to do that again. So yeah, I've got a motorbike sitting there that needs engine work that I just can't quite seem to tackle because God damn it, it's just too much of a challenge. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Okay, folks, we're going to end part 5 of our conversation with Matt Frost there. Um, Make sure you tune in for our 6th and final part coming up. Thanks for tuning in to Beyond the Call.